Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, welcome to the show where we don't sing it, we bring it. Help us out and click subscribe to show your support. While you're at it, if you're a YouTube user, make sure you enable notifications so they let you know every time a new episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast goes up. Guys, let's talk. Remember the days when you were always ready to go? Now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up, BlueChew.com. That's blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach, and since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill, so you can be ready whenever the opportunity arises. When I tried Blue Chew, I really noticed something extra. Now, this isn't just for guys who can't perform, it's for any guy who wants extra function to enhance their performance in the bedroom. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door. It's in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor visits, no waiting in the pharmacy. The best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the United States, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment absolutely free when you use our special promo code FROPODCAST. Just pay the $5 shipping fee. Again, that's Blue, B-L-U-E, Chew.com, promo code FROPODCAST to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring the podcast. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, you want your name in the shoutouts like Mike and Lansdale, make sure you check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast. Sign up today. Don't forget, we have loyalty rewards. Any $15 a month contributor can co-host an episode of one of our live shows, and our $7.50 a month contributors, you can get entered into a drawing to also co-host an episode of one of our live broadcasts. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We'll be taking your questions, your comments, anything you'd like to discuss through the chat feature that you use in your streaming service where you're catching this podcast right now. If the show is over and you catch the podcast later, make sure you send us your questions, your comments, anything you want us to talk about in a future episode on the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line 267-642-1160. Give us your questions, your comments, anything you want us to discuss, and also make sure you tell us who you are so we can give you credit for your questions in our episode. Don't forget, if you're new to the Pro Wrestling Podcast or if you just want to catch up on what we're going to be talking about, go to our homepage at frowrestling.com. You can preview all the topics coming to the show. It's a great way to come up with things you think that we should add and become an active member and active listener in the podcast. So, hello everybody. We got so much to talk about. It's been a crazy week. Ever since WrestleMania, everything's been up in the air. It's almost like, and I think I heard the analogy this week from Jim Ross on the Ross Report, that WWE is kind of reset. They've hit the reset button on their entire brand. All those championships changing hands at WrestleMania, the Superstar Shakeup coming, and to be perfectly honest with you, after watching Raw last night, I'm not overly impressed with the first half of the Superstar Shakeup. I love AJ Styles on Raw. I love the fact that he gets a chance to potentially down the road, hopefully next year's WrestleMania, face Seth Rollins for that Universal Championship. Now, I question whether they'll let Seth Rollins keep the belt that long. I hope they do. The only other way I see it working would be if Seth were to drop the title, say at SummerSlam, to maybe Drew McIntyre, have AJ Styles win it from McIntyre at the Royal Rumble, and have Seth Rollins win another Rumble and challenge AJ Styles, or something like that. But in the end, AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins needs to happen at a WrestleMania, and now we have the groundwork laid where that is a possibility, provided they don't shift Seth Rollins over to SmackDown tonight. Now, I don't foresee that happening because Daniel Bryan didn't come to Raw, but stranger things have happened, and at the end of the day, what I could see having happen is a Raw Superstar show up, take championship from, or I apologize, I said Daniel Bryan, I meant Kofi Kingston. Wow, I'm still on pre-WrestleMania time frame here. If you would have seen Kofi move to Raw, it would have been very easy to see Seth go in there. That didn't happen. And with all the talk of possibly splitting up tag teams, I actually thought it would have been a great way to split Kofi away from the New Day without actually splitting up the New Day. Because I know they don't really want to end that angle, but I feel like it's run its course, especially with him being WWE Champion. So that would have been an easy way to do that, but now obviously that's not what they're going to do. One of these days, I hope they listen to me. Turn the whole group bad, turn them all heel, and let them win the tag titles and protect all those championships like an old school faction. But Vince McMahon is teasing a huge announcement tonight, the biggest acquisition in SmackDown history. So we can debate who that is. Is it Seth Rollins going to the blue brand? I doubt it. Is it somebody like I don't know, Braun Strowman going to the blue brand. Could be. I don't think that's the biggest acquisition in history. I think Vince McMahon, in his mind, in the way he approaches the business, he really does view Roman Reigns as the only blue chip player in the industry, which may be as flawed as it gets, because us fans, we voiced our concerns about having the guy crammed down our throat in the past. But if Vince wants to move him to SmackDown, I think Vince would use the label biggest acquisition in SmackDown history for Roman Reigns. So my prediction for tonight would be we see Roman Reigns head over to the blue brand. Now, as far as last night's situation, couple reflections. One, I love one of the ones that was not even discussed really on television, and that's the fact that Eric Young, member of Sanity, has been moved to Raw, but not his tag team partners. And I'm fine with that, because Eric Young has never really had to be a member of Sanity to be a great performer. Anybody who saw him in Impact Wrestling or TNA, when he was world champion, he was incredible as a singles performer. Now, going to NXT, being the veteran leader of this faction and having all these perks and benefits that paid off for him was a great way to kickstart other people's career. But let's face it, they have wasted Eric Young for a significant amount of time now. He is much better than they're allowing him to perform on the SmackDown brand as a member of Sanity. Now, maybe this creates a situation where Sanity as a tag team can get refocused in SmackDown. You have the Usos gone. It's going to leave a little bit of a void. I'm sure somebody will move from Raw to SmackDown tonight. One of the tag teams. I would imagine Heavy Machinery will stay on SmackDown permanently. I would imagine there's a few others they may think about moving over there. But in the end, the stuff that happened last night that kind of shocked me was, one, I have a problem, and so do apparently a lot of people online, especially on Twitter, with the Viking Experience name controversy. You have spent the better part of the last year and some odd months building up the War Raiders, and now they've got the chant, the war, 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 and you've got this huge crowd following. If you were watching NXT TakeOver New York, you could see how organically the War Raiders have gotten over with the fans. You bring them to the main roster, still the NXT Tag Team Champions, which I think is a flaw, because they have to go back and drop those belts at some point, but you bring them over to Raw, which is fine, I have no problem with moving them up, but they've built a brand. Okay? They've established themselves as a brand, as the War Raiders. You keep the name. This isn't like WCW and WWE where you have some kind of copyright issue with, Razor Ramon going to WCW or the Diamond Stud coming to WWE. You have a situation where you own all the property rights. Why would you go and change their name? Now, I understand. I saw Mick Foley on Twitter. I saw Road Dogg on Twitter, both defending the fact that talent will get over no matter what their name is, and I agree. I don't disagree with that at all. What my issue is that you slow the momentum of the build when you change the mid-character, and now you bring them in. All that fanfare, impressive victory last night on Raw, great tag team, they belong there to begin with, but you've given them like this really hokey name now, and now the fans have to get used to that all over again. Instead of just picking up where you left off on the NXT TakeOver show and just running with all that momentum, instead, this happens. And what they really should have done, let's be honest, is at NXT TakeOver, if you were going to move them to the main roster and Ricochet and Aleister Black are also going to be in the main roster, then there should have been a third team in that tag team championship match at TakeOver. Maybe the Undisputed Era, maybe somebody else, the Street Profits, somebody who could slip in, almost like the Iconics for the women's division, and slip in, take those NXT tag titles, freeing them up to come to Raw. And then you don't have to have that crosstalk. Because right now, let's be honest, what are you going to call them when they go to NXT, the next show that they do, when they either drop the belts or defend the belts? You're going to call them the Viking Experience? You're going to call them the War Raiders? Are they going to be something different on both brands, even though they come out to the same get up? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Just my opinion. I think it's a problem, but whatever. WrestleMania 36, not 35, 36, in the news this week because the word is they already have a plan for Becky Lynch at WrestleMania next year, and that would be a rematch with Ronda Rousey. Now, I know we've done this to death, but a lot of people are frustrated that we never got that one-on-one match, Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey. We got Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey. We got this triple threat being the first female main event, but it's time. We wanted to see that one-on-one, Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch. We didn't get that. Word is Vince McMahon already has the plan to do 2020 WrestleMania 36, Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey. Now, on the Ronda Rousey front, she came out and was very clear. she's going on vacation, and it's an impregnation vacation. She's looking to have a baby. So now let's do some simple math here. If she leaves and spends 9 months or 40 weeks giving birth to a child, then she has to have time to get herself back into ring shape and want to leave her baby behind. I don't know if she has enough time to get here for WrestleMania next year. Maybe next year's SummerSlam might be a little more realistic, but I don't see a situation where if she does have the child. Now, some people said she's pregnant already. Now, she hasn't confirmed that. She made it sound like she's going off on vacation to make that happen. More power to her and Travis Brown. But, if she is pregnant, maybe. Just maybe. But I can't imagine she would have worked WrestleMania pregnant. I can't. I don't think that's even remotely healthy. So, I don't know that we're going to get that chance for that main event. Or I shouldn't say main event. They didn't say it would be the main event. It was just a match was in the plans for 36 between Rousey and Lynch. I think it's a great match. It's one I want to see. I don't know if it'll be ready to go by the time for WrestleMania 36 rolls around, if she is trying to have a child, but we'll have to wait and see. This Sunday, April 21st, The Shield will have the last chapter. It's their last match. It's going to be a network television special, a WWE network television special, so you got to stream it live from the network. It's going to be their last match. I would imagine it's going to be like a 6-man tag against Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre and Baron Corbin again, because we haven't seen that to death. I would have much rather seen them do something more substantial or more important, but I don't think that's going to happen. I know there were people last night who were like, oh, who's going to be their partner? And he was going to come out. And there were some people speculating that maybe Dean Ambrose had changed his mind and re-signed, and that was going to be the surprise last night. Was they didn't have to shake anybody up. He was staying. That would have been very cool as well. But not the case. Now, one of the reasons he may not be sticking around is he's been offered $6 million a year by All Elite Wrestling. I don't blame the guy. Heck, are you kidding me? That's the kind of money that's like professional sports athlete money. And don't get me wrong, I think professional wrestlers are professional athletes and deserve to be paid as such, especially with WWE's as big a corporation as they are. However, let's be honest. WWE superstars, John Cena, people of that nature, they make millions and millions and millions every year based on their merchandising and everything else. That's something that WWE does far better than any of the sports leagues. John Cena's royalties from merchandise alone is enough to hit some of those numbers. So, Dean Ambrose could have made better money potentially staying in WWE, even if there wasn't the $6 million guarantee. But I think he really just wants some time off. He hasn't announced that he's signing anywhere or even negotiating with anybody anywhere. And if you listen to Renee Young or Roman Reigns, you listen to Seth Rollins, they all are of the opinion he just wants some time off. A good 6-8 months to just take time off and recoup and just be him. I know he wasn't real happy with the creative direction of his character. I'd argue that since he announced he's not re-signing, they've actually done a really nice job of booking him. So we'll have to see how his career plays out. But this Sunday night, that last chapter, make sure you tune in. What an incredible team they've been over the years. Whether they're with each other, against each other, feuding, friends, doesn't matter. Always entertaining the Shield. And, sometimes it's just time to move on. Let's face it, a lot of people are like, man, they haven't been around that long. They really have. Remember, they've been together since 2011 or something like that. That's a long time. That's longer than the Horsemen, the group of the Horsemen that went into the Hall of Fame. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Oh my Lord, how can I not remember who was in that conglomeration? And Tully Blanchard. The Four Horsemen, when they were together, they didn't have an 8-year run. They had a 4-year run. These guys have lasted a long time. Now, I know they've split up and got back together and things like that along the way, but generally speaking, at least 2 of the 3 have been pretty well solid the whole time. And I think it's something they could always go back to. It's like D-Generation X. If they came back tomorrow, people would still cheer. But I think it's been overexposed at this point. And that's why it may be a good thing for him to move away for a little while, just so we don't see it every week in our face. EC3 on the house shows and on the dark match tapings for the different shows has been being brought to the ring by a new manager. And that's actually his real-life best friend, Drake Maverick, formerly in Impact Wrestling. I guess they had their really great connection and got along very well. And they aren't really doing a whole lot with Maverick right now because the Authors of Pain are injured. Well, one of them is injured, and they're not going to bring the other one back without his partner. So when he was Rockstar Spud, apparently they had a great friendship, and now they're kind of pairing them together on these dark matches and house shows. Can you imagine anybody that they have botched the call-up to the main roster as bad as EC3? I know people are going to say Shinsuke Nakamura, but guess what? Nakamura main evented WrestleMania, or had a World Championship match at WrestleMania. Some people say Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze was 220 pounds at his heaviest, so I never expected him to make him a megastar, okay? Bo Dallas, same thing. He's not the biggest guy in the world to begin with. He got over in NXT because you could be a smaller guy and get over in NXT. But a lot of the guys that come up, they're not the size of these bigger stars. So EC3, big dude, ripped, great look, great attitude, even kept the Impact Wrestling name of EC3 instead of going back to his old NXT name. So you thought they would have done something of some sort, and then they had conversations about him feuding with John Cena and some other people, and just none of it has come together. And you can't convince me that it's always Vince just getting sick and tired of people. And if it is, then maybe he really is out of touch with the business. If he gives up on talent that easily, then he's an idiot. And I'm not trying to make fun of Vince McMahon, but you don't put that kind of promotion into a wrestler and then just give up on him after a month because he hasn't gotten over yet with the fans. You know, we're in a situation where you have acquired so much talent from the indies, you have to find a way to showcase that talent, not bury it all the time. Cramming Roman Reigns down their throat 365 days a year and letting EC3, who's a fresh face, get nothing. Get him squashed by Braun Strowman on Raw, things like that. That's pointless. What a horrible, horrible booking of an incredible character. Another guy who has just been booked horribly, Bobby Lashley. We thought we were going to get to see him and Brock Lesnar last summer. We haven't. They've given him the Intercontinental title twice. That's nice, I suppose. But now there's talk of after SummerSlam, he may take a step away from WWE for a little while so he can go back to Bellator and have another fight or two in mixed martial arts. Similar to what Brock Lesnar wants to do with UFC. I know there's contract negotiations between Dana White and Brock Lesnar for August to fight Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight championship. Same deal here. He wants to fight Ryan Bader, the Bellator heavyweight champion, and I would love to see the fight. I just think it's weird that WWE has people on their brand who are also contracted to two rival promotions in a whole nother sport. Very weird. But Bobby Lashley has done very well for himself in mixed martial arts, so I think he would be a great fight for Bader. I don't know that he has the skill set to defeat Bader, but I suppose if he gets some good strikes in, maybe. I'm more excited about the Brock Lesnar-Cormier thing. I actually think Cormier is going to finish Brock Lesnar pretty early, but I could be wrong. Lesnar has some heavy lumber he could throw down. He hits him a couple times with those big hammer fists, and it's over. But we'll have to wait and see, but that's the possibility. It looks like Lashley might be heading for the mixed martial arts world after SummerSlam. After the huge G1 Supercard over WrestleMania weekend between Ring of Honor and New Japan, apparently there's some issues. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, during the 4-team tag team match, so you had Evil and Sonata, you had the Briscoes, the Guerrillas of Destiny, all these teams, 4 teams wrestling for the Ring of Honor and New Japan Tag Team Championship. I apologize, PCO and Brody King as well. Wrestling for those championships. And at the end of the match, that's when Enzo and Cass XL, I'm trying to call them by their new names, the free agents with a Z, when they came out of the crowd and attacked the Briscoe brothers, it was very hokey. I think it was meant to look legitimate, but wrestling fans are not stupid. We know that that's a work, and so does New Japan. And apparently New Japan was not made aware of it, and so they didn't buy into it. New Japan's wrestling audience is a very serious audience. They don't like hokey angles and things like that. They like a lot of reality in their product, and this was not reality. This was dumb. You know, not because the angle sucks. I think it's a fantastic angle, and I think they're a great acquisition for Ring of Honor if they're bringing them in. The issue is you have a business partner and a great working relationship with New Japan. You make them privy of all your plans. The Guerrillas of Destiny, livid, because they weren't made aware of what was going on. They didn't know if it was a work or a shoot or what was going on outside the ring. They've been throwing haze back and forth with the Briscoe brothers all week on Twitter. I'm sure those two are going to lock horns again, probably in a New Japan ring, I would imagine. And then there's also, they have a tour coming up, a Worlds Collide tour coming up, where I suspect the Guerrillas of Destiny probably dropped the Ring of Honor tag titles to somebody because of the issues now arising between Ring of Honor and New Japan because of this booking decision. And I hope to God it doesn't impact anything long term. Those two companies are amazing. They have so many incredible talents on both rosters. And when they bring them together and have these huge unified shows, some of that wrestling is some of the best wrestling you'll see in the world. So hopefully they find a way to iron out their issues and get back to business. I gotta react to what was talked about this week about Sexy Star. If you don't know who that is, she was on Lucha Underground. She won the Lucha Underground Championship despite being a female. And she made comments this week that she believes that her winning the Lucha Underground Championship in some way influenced the women's evolution in WWE and is a big part of why they were given the main event spot at WrestleMania. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy for Sexy Star. She is a great worker. She makes it believable that a female talent can compete with a male talent, much in the same way I believe Becky Lynch or Ronda Rousey could probably do it, or Charlotte could probably do it with a WWE talent, Nia Jax especially. But to claim that the reason that the women are main eventing WrestleMania has anything to do with Lucha Underground is so incredibly absurd and so delusional that, look, this girl has had credibility issues in the past anyways. If anybody doesn't remember, she's the one who started shooting on somebody at the end of a match and tried to legitimately break somebody's arm in Mexico. And now she's like shooting her mouth off about this. And I don't think she has a shot anywhere except for in Mexico at this point because of the way she works with people. But you should have seen the litany of wrestling talents coming out. Taya Valkyrie, Brian Cage, all these people coming out. Gail Kim, who I always love Gail Kim's opinions because she's very straightforward and she doesn't pull any punches. All of them criticizing her for being insane, for thinking that she had anything to do with this. Give the women their due. Becky Lynch got over organically all by herself despite WWE. I understand that WWE is the machine that got behind her and drove after she started picking up the momentum. But if she didn't connect with the crowd, that wouldn't have happened. Charlotte Flair got over organically with the crowd. Sasha Banks has gotten over organically with the crowd. That's why the women's evolution is what it is. So it's nothing to do with Sexy Star. I'm happy for her and her career accomplishments, but she has nothing to do with it. By the way, on the Nia Jax front, double ACL tear, going in for surgery on both knees, and we are not going to see her for a significant amount of time. Now, what I hope is that with Nia Jax going away for a while to have the surgery on her knees, when they bring her back, make her the monster heel again. She has been so watered down for the last 6 to 8 months. She's not menacing at all anymore. You know what I'm saying? There used to be a time where it didn't matter who you put her in the ring with, you thought, man, she's going to kill somebody. Now, she could lose to Dana Brooke and I wouldn't be surprised. Not even a little bit. And her buddy, Tamina Snuka, it's the first time she stayed healthy for any extended period of time, and her tag team partner gets both ACL tears. Incredible, so unlucky for her. But on the topic of the female division, how could we have an episode this week and not talk about Bayley and Sasha Banks? So the word has been that, yes, at WrestleMania, last minute, somebody decided to flip the script, put tag team championships on the Iconics. I didn't like the decision. I think when you build up that these tag team championships are going to be defended on all brands, NXT, NXT UK, Raw, SmackDown, you should have at least let the inaugural champions do that. At least one defense on every show. It would have brought credibility to the belts. It would have given a legitimate run to the initial champions. I think Bayley and Sasha have been through so much this past year. They really deserved it. And people always say in wrestling, you don't deserve anything. No, BS. You deserve it. When you work 365 days a year, you're busting your tail, and you're over as popular as they are, you deserve it. Charlotte Flair deserved almost everything she got. People who claim, oh, she only gets what she gets because of her dad. She's an incredible wrestling talent. If her last name was not Flair, at this point, any wrestling fan in the world would kill to see her, even if her name wasn't Flair. She's on the level with any other major talent in the world. Tessa Blanchard. Anybody is in a lot of ways pales in comparison to Charlotte. She is incredible. She was an athlete before wrestling and has just taken that division to a whole nother level. And in all reality, had Becky Lynch not got the crowd following she got, back in October, November last year, and had Becky Lynch not got hurt when Nia Jax punched her in the face, it would have been Charlotte and Rousey at Mania in just a singles match. They flipped that script because of Becky Lynch accidentally getting over and having to come up with a main event women's match for Survivor Series. Had that not happened, Charlotte was the hand-picked one, not because of daddy, because of her talent to main event WrestleMania with Ronda Rousey. The only reason it changed was because of that injury to Becky Lynch in November. So keep that in mind. Now, back to Bayley and Sasha Banks. Listen, they've been teasing. Apparently, Sasha wanted to quit at WrestleMania. When they found out they were dropping the belts, the two of them were laying down in the locker room and in the hotel in protest of losing the belts to show their displeasure. Like, how old are we? Now, don't get me wrong. I've been debating this back and forth with people online all week. I get it. Sasha Banks is incredible in the ring. You'll not hear one word to the contrary from me. I think she's as good as almost anybody in the history of this business, and yes, I mean that. However, she has had women's championship runs, first women's main event on Raw, first women's pay-per-view main event, first Hell in a Cell. She was in the first Elimination Chamber. She's done so many firsts, it's ridiculous. So she didn't get the main event WrestleMania as the first. Well, one of the firsts needs to go to somebody else other than her. In addition, I'm going to go flip the script back to the other side. Yes, every one of her championship reigns got squashed immediately after winning. She had the belt for a day for one run, a week for another run, and WWE has never given her a real legitimate chance to run with the title. And maybe that's a flaw in their booking, but no matter whether she had the belt or not, she has been considered by the fans, and let's be clear, the fans are what matter, and the fans have decided she's a legit boss. And take the pun for what it is. She is a boss in the ring. She's incredible in the ring. And she's earned so much in the ring. So I have no problem with fans saying, hey, listen, yes, she had all those accolades, but they never really gave her the support behind the accolades to make those championship runs mean anything. I agree with you. I mean, see, and when they get the tag team titles, I agree with you. I wanted them to keep the belts at Mania. I wanted to see them defend them against Io Shirai and Kairi Sane over in NXT. I wanted to see them wrestle the Iconics on SmackDown. I wanted to see them wrestle Nia Jax and Tamina on Raw. Maybe have an individual match with Natalya and Beth Phoenix. I would have been fine with all those. I really wanted WrestleMania to be against Trish and Lita. That would have been much more important to me. However, I'm not Vince McMahon, and he has to look at his long-term booking, and if you can get the Iconics over, because they've been a comedy crap team for a year, if you could use this as fuel for the fire to make them a legit team, then you do that. You could have Sasha and Bayley win the belts back, but at the end of the day, throwing a tantrum and then wanting to quit because you didn't get booked the way you wanted to get booked, you know what? There are women wrestlers all over the country. I go to a lot of independent wrestling shows, and you see female talents who are busting their tail, broken bones, blood, sweat, and tears every single night trying to make $20 for the evening. This is a woman who's a multimillionaire because of the incredible opportunities that WWE has provided her, and not all from her paycheck or base salary. She's getting killer money on her merchandise. But here's the point. So many women would do anything to have her spot, to be in her place, to have her role, to be the person who has had all these championship runs, even if they were a day or a week long. Because there's so many women who've never touched the gold. Natalya is easily one of the best female wrestlers on the roster. She's held the women's championship twice in like 12 years. And both of those reigns were minimal. Look back at some of the talents who've been in WWE all throughout history. Female talents don't always get these long, lengthy runs. That's just the way it is. Maybe Asuka deserves longer. Well, if Asuka has it, well, then Sasha doesn't have room. Well, there's two brands. Well, you got Becky, Charlotte, Asuka. People get mad when any one of them don't have a belt. You had Rousey all year, Nia Jax. How do you make room for everybody? Not everybody could be the number one. And Sasha Banks is as over as you're ever going to get without the belt. So here's the reality. You can have the championship belt, throw your temper tantrum, be champion. Fine. But then the fans don't respect you as much. They're like, stop whining. Stop being a baby. Get out there and be thankful. Here's the reality. If they would have handled things differently and said, Vince, I understand the booking change. That's fine. Is there a chance that we can do this going forward? And present him with ideas. Remember listening to the DVD documentaries from Shawn Michaels and Triple H about, the Monday Night Wars and why they connected with Vince so well was because they brought ideas to him. They didn't just wait for creative. They came up with things. They had a pulse on the industry. They had a connection to the fans, and they presented him with ideas that they thought the fans would like. And it worked. It worked many times. Do that. They could have presented him with an alternative plan. Listen, you want to get the Iconics over? Fine. We'll put them over at Mania. Let us get the belts back at SummerSlam. And then give us a legit run with them. Now, let's be honest. They had the belts for what? 2 months? It's not the longest reign in the world, but it's not like anything to sneeze at. It's still a good reign. Be happy you got one. How many championships has Dana Brooke won? Or Alicia Fox? What, one? And I'm not saying they're the best wrestlers in the world, but at least they've been on the roster a long, long time, especially Alicia Fox. Quite honestly, as much as she's not my favorite wrestler in the world, you'd think after all her bumps and bruises, she would have earned at least another championship run instead of the garbage one she got. Come on, there are talents on that roster who would love to have your spot. And you've got a lot coming up in NXT who are going to be huge over. We've got Lacey Evans now. You got Casey Catanzaro waiting to come up. You've got, if Peyton Royce and Billie Kay ever decide to split off and go singles, what are you going to do with them? Like, there's so many possibilities. You can't be fighting and throwing your feet down and having temper tantrums because you don't get booked as the number one all the time. Just understand, keep getting yourself over with the crowd, and you will be rewarded. Vince likes money. And if you're over with the crowd, that equals money, and he will notice. As much as he was resistant to Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles or anything like that, he eventually comes around. Even Kofi Kingston, you can't convince me he wanted Kofi as the main event of Mania until Kofi had the match at Elimination Chamber, and he had no idea he was going to get the response that he did. And you know what? It made him change his mind because they were listening to you, the fans. And that's what Sasha Banks needs to understand. Make the fans care, and then Vince will care. Going to move past Bayley and Sasha. Bayley, I don't even know why I bring Bayley's name up. She's still wrestling on Raw. They ran that angle last night where she gets a phone call trying to call Sasha and she's not taking her calls. I guess she's planning on staying with the company. Sasha Banks is on vacation so she could decide if she wants to quit or not, which I think is ludicrous. I'd be like, no, you have a contract. You're sticking out your contract until we absolutely have to let you go one way or the other. You can either do it and make more money when we promote the heck out of you, or you could sit at home, collect your downside minimum, and ride off into the sunset. But remember, when Rey Mysterio was with the company last time, when he sat out and wouldn't perform, they got to extend his contract longer but for lack of performance. Maybe she's afraid of that. Like, they need to think about all these angles. In the end, I hope everybody patches things up and they can come back together. But we'll just have to wait and see. I did want to point out that the fans chanting after Raw goes off the air every week. We've got CM Punk chants last night. You've got AEW chants, all these things. Like, seriously, people, it's 2019. You know how technology is. One, the CM Punk chants they'll leave in. You know why? Because CM Punk is on the network. Yeah, I don't know if you guys figured this out. They always edit out the AEW stuff, and they don't edit out the CM Punk stuff. You know why? It's like Eric Bischoff used to say, controversy creates cash. If you guys chant CM Punk, it means when you go home and turn on the network, you're looking for CM Punk. You're going to watch some old CM Punk videos. That's generating business for them. If you start chanting AEW, you notice you don't hear a lot of that on the broadcast. You know why? Because you can filter it out now. So all you're doing is screaming to hear yourself scream. You're not influencing anything with Vince. He's just like, all right, edit that out. I don't want to hear that. Because that's another company. Be happy they let Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and people like that talk about AEW at the Hall of Fame ceremony. That's a rarity. But screaming and chanting some of these chants is just ludicrous. AEW, we don't even know what that is yet. Now the word is they got their contract coming up, the announcement with TBS and TNT to be on Turner Network Television. I hope they do. I hope they are very successful. But all the people who are so incredibly over and marks for AEW, you don't even know what you're marking out for yet. Double or Nothing hasn't even happened yet. What if they get there and it looks like Impact Wrestling? Or that Global Force Wrestling, the few episodes of Amped that were out there? What if it looks like that, or it looks like crap? What if the matches don't come off the way you want them to? What if they don't know how to book the time? Because one of the big things about Cody and all those guys want to do is allow talents the time to tell their story in the ring. What if that doesn't work? What if you run out of time? There's a lot of things that can go wrong for a new young promotion. I don't support Triple H trash talking them at the ceremony because I'm proud of Cody and the Bucks for going out and doing this. But for the fans, I don't understand the die-hard commitment to this group that have done nothing yet to make you get excited about. What, because of All In? If you don't remember, go back and look up the comments from All In. People were so excited for the show. When the show was over, they were like, yeah, there were some letdowns in there. There really were. Now, the show is still amazing. It's one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time, but there was some letdowns. Don't act like AEW is going to be flawless. They're going to have letdowns too. Just give it time. But give the WWE stars their due. They're busting their tail. They can't help it that Vince is a billionaire and going to war with Tony Khan at some point possibly. Just let them have their moment. Support the people who you have exposure to. You haven't seen Cody wrestling forever. You haven't seen Kenny wrestling forever. You haven't seen Chris Jericho since Wrestle Kingdom. Let's wait and see what they actually do once they get their television deal, and what the presentation looks like, and what their pay-per-view distribution looks like, what type of television show they put together, who the announcers are outside of just Jim Ross, all those things. Let's see what they actually do. What if they come off looking like ECW light? You'll be so disappointed. Now, I understand big budget, you would expect that not to happen, but we don't know till we see it. Keep your eyes on that. The question as to why The Undertaker was at Raw, I got that sent to me, and I thought everybody, most of the people who tune in this podcast, I assume, are diehard Mark fans like I am. The Undertaker is going to be wrestling in Saudi Arabia. He needs an opponent, and he needs something of substance, and Elias is doing nothing right now. I believe the plan is for The Undertaker to come in and wrestle with Elias at the Saudi Arabia show. Now, my only issue is, if The Undertaker is good enough to go to Saudi Arabia, he should have been good enough to go at WrestleMania before Raw. And what a waste of not having Taker at Mania. Like that, he's like a stalwart of Mania. You didn't have to have him do much. You should have had him destroy Elias at Mania, setting up the match. Have him come back on Monday night and do it again. The John Cena thing could have gone somewhere else, but whatever. I just think they missed the boat with The Undertaker at Mania. But yes, I believe that he is coming in to wrestle at the Saudi Arabia show against Elias. I think that's what's going to happen. Probably another casket match. That would be my guess. Rumor is Roman Reigns, I was asked, I guess there's some news articles out there, E-Wrestling News, Wrestling Inc., both talking about how Roman Reigns' next opponent is supposed to be Baron Corbin. Somebody sent me a message, said, hey, listen, is that true? Is that really the crappy story they're going to go with? I think that's why Baron Corbin beat Kurt Angle, was to try to supposedly build him up, but it's not working. Because people don't want to see Baron Corbin. But yeah, it does sound like that might be his next move. So if that is the case, and if he is going to SmackDown, expect Corbin to go to SmackDown as well. Hopefully at some point they let him go back to being the character he was. That was much more over for me. This bald Constable Corbin outfit looking dude is just a waste of time. But we'll have to wait and see. And the last thing I want to talk about this episode is Superstar Billy Graham. He came out after WrestleMania very critical of the decision to put the championship on Kofi Kingston, and I have a problem with it. Here's the deal. And I'm actually friends with Superstar Billy Graham on Facebook, and I've sent him messages about this week. And of course, if you don't agree with him, he doesn't want to hear anything you have to say, so whatever. Grizzled old veteran who's just bitter because he's out of the game now. But the reality of the situation is this. In 1970, people still believed wrestling was real. They really did. Bruno Sammartino was a thick Italian buff dude, all hairy and grizzled veteran. It was believable he could beat anybody. Superstar Billy Graham had the big pythons and the tie-dye shirts, and he looked like $1 million. He was believable to be able to beat anybody. Andre the Giant beat anybody. Hulk Hogan, even when he was a heel, be able to beat anybody. It's 2019. People have smartened up to the business. They know that it is a choreographed, stage athletic display of entertainment. Okay? Do I consider it a sport? I don't consider it a sport in a competitive sense, but it is absolutely athletic. Incredibly. Probably the most athletic activity in the world, especially when you consider the schedule they keep. However, in 2019, the don't want some muscle-headed freak as their world champion. You know, Superstar Billy Graham came out and he was busting on John Cena and Dave Bautista for their jacked up physique, saying they must have been roiding and everything else. They have a stringent policy in WWE for testing. John Cena has always been the big. Look back at his youth. There's pictures of him when he was in high school. He was jacked out of his mind then. He's always been jacked. He wasn't doing steroids at 15. He's always been jacked. Brock Lesnar has been jacked since high school. Go back and look at his high school football team picture. He's a monster. It's not all steroids. Look, I understand there are huge people who use steroids. It's not everybody. Get off it. Now, Batista, maybe he is. I don't know. He's a part-time wrestler. So remember, with Brock Lesnar, part-timers aren't subject to the same testing. But Brock Lesnar is getting ready to try to make a return to UFC and has been in the US ADA testing protocol for a significant period of time now and has no failed tests since. So anything Lesnar has is legit. And he's as big or bigger than anybody in the business physically. So Superstar Graham, get a clue. It's 2019. Workout regimens, things that are at your disposal that are not steroids, are significantly better now than they were in the 70s. So you don't have to be a steroided freak to put on mass. That's one. And by the way, shameless free plug to my buddy Ryback, who I've been talking to online. He's got his Feed Me More supplements, who they are all natural. There's no steroids in Ryback's supplement line. He's doing very well for himself now because he has legit supplements to help you build mass, burn calories, get rid of fat, get a more cut feel. And that is legit. Ryback is jacked to the nines too, and he's not a steroid freak. Okay? It's not about that. And it's also not about being the biggest guy in the world. Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, John Cena, including John Cena, because I know when he's blown up right after a workout, he looks big, but when he's not right after a workout, he doesn't look all that huge. These guys are not like Superstar Graham and Hulk Hogan anymore. They are smaller, and it's more believable, because most of them are smaller. The problem is when you got somebody like Braun Strowman on the roster, it's hard to believe anybody could beat somebody like him. But the reality is, that's what we want to see now. We don't want to see someone who has the physique of Superstar Billy Graham has to overpower everybody anymore, because that's not legit wrestling anymore. We don't believe that it's real anymore. We want to see the underdog story. We want to see somebody like Daniel Bryan with this unique character he has. We want to see Bray Wyatt, who's a fat guy who still gets over as a legit threat to a championship. That's what we want to see in 2019. So Superstar Graham, I can appreciate he's got an opinion, but obviously his opinion is severely flawed and he's completely out of touch with the fans, because that Kofi Mania thing was real. And there was more fans celebrating, watching wrestlers like MVP and Shad Gaspard online crying when he wins the championship because of how much it meant to the African American community. I'm thrilled for Kofi Kingston. He's an incredible ambassador, not only for the African American community, but for any community, including the WWE Universe. I don't care what color Kofi Kingston is. He's an incredible athlete. He earned this from 11 years of blood, sweat, and tears, hard work, and dedication to the WWE. He has done anything they have ever asked him to do, and he's done it with a smile, and he's done it well. He's been a good guy. For a little while, he was a bad guy. He's been in the New Day. He's been the Intercontinental and United States champion. He had feuds with Randy Orton years ago. All these things. He's done it all except for the championship. He deserved this. And if Superstar Graham can't understand that build, this 11-year journey to a championship for an incredible African-American athlete who is a role model for children, who is an inspiration to young children, who is fulfilling the dreams of many other wrestlers who won't get that opportunity to be a world champion and being a person of color, congratulations to Kofi Kingston, and I hope he keeps that belt for a significant period of time and sticks his reign right in Superstar Graham's face. Because in my opinion, Superstar Graham is nothing but a bitter old troll who doesn't like the fact that he couldn't get over enough to keep his championship. He was also trash talking Bob Backlund for taking his title, saying he had the most uncharismatic person take the title from him who never deserved it. Bob Backlund was incredible. He was an amateur wrestling champion. He was a legit wrestler. He was believable in the 70s and early 80s because of those qualities, because that's what it was back then. Superstar Graham was a few years ahead of his time in a lot of ways. He could have been Hulk Hogan a few years later. And then the Hogan phase is gone. We want technical wrestling now. Deal with it. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks as always out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all our music and sound effects we use in our show. Today's podcast is sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen to pick up your copy today. And to alleyrepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. Are you sick and tired of dropping $60 to $100 for the latest and greatest wrestling video game? Stop immediately and go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook. Create your wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to all Facebook users, totally free. If you're looking for your next career move, you're considering college, university life, or you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our sister website at frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, as Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. If you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsj101sports.com for their articles on the world of wrestling, or check out my blog, In Fro's Corner, for my latest pieces. Another one coming out later this week, all about the Sasha Banks Saga. At the same time, if you want to support indie wrestling, make sure you go to frowrestling.com, click the indie events tab at the top of the page, and find a show coming to you. Get that one-to-one personal experience with a wrestling organization in an area close to you. Check that out. And if you are new to the Fro Wrestling Podcast, please don't forget, send questions, comments, and concerns, anything you want us to cover, to the Fro Wrestling Sound Off line, 267-642-1160. Talk to text service. You talk, it'll text your questions to us. Give us your name in your question so we can give you credit during the show. Until next time, take care, everybody. Have a great night, and make sure you tune in to SmackDown tonight. Night number 2 of the Superstar Shakeup. Let's see if Roman Reigns ends up on SmackDown. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Bye.